Hospital Reporters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Well, I wasn't actually going to make another video today. Obviously, literally just yesterday I uploaded my 3-hour plus Great Escape video, Shedding Tears, which most of you probably haven't even watched all of it yet. So I was going to leave it actually. I had another video planned, which I was going to do. Well, I was going to do a comment reply video probably on Friday, and then do this video I'm doing now next week. But I looked out the bloody window. It's pouring with rain. Right? It's pouring with rain, and I've got back from work. It's only about 1:30. I'm home from work, and I thought, what the hell? I'll do it now. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought, you don't mind, do you, if I make another video so soon after the last one? After this, I'll give you a little break just to catch up, and I'll probably do a comment reply video this weekend. Alright. Anyway, you may notice a slight change to my studio here. I actually have that. Do you see it? Right next to my MAGA hat and my Boris t-shirt, I've got Boudica. That's a painting, actually, a little smaller miniature painting that was done by my good friend Liz of the Crafty Nihilists. So you may know Liz, of course. She's been in my probe videos. Her and her husband Mark are the Crafty Nihilist together, the Gestalt entity known as the Crafty Nihilist. And she's produced this wonderful thing here, this Boudica, because I thought it's the perfect addition actually to my little studio set, because this studio set is kind of like everything that I sort of hold dear and believe in is here in kind of form, isn't it? All the posters and that, and Russell and the Porters thing. So Boudica's a great addition to that, and I can sort of sit here and just have a Boudica moment wherever I like, Oh no, not now. Anyway, this film is about a film. It's another roving review of a movie, but actually it's not roving. It's not roving, is it? This is going to be the equivalent, which I'm going to do at home. So roving means it's my usual thing where I've just finished work, I'm in my work clothes, and I'm sort of walking through rain-swept streets towards the cinema with my camera in my hand. You know, the sort of thing. And talking about the film beforehand. I've given up. I've given up anyway. But you may know that in my last roving film review, which was the one of Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, I said I'm going to review the film Tesla, and I'm going to. But I've given up on seeing it on the big screen now. The pandemic has just spoiled everything. It was screened at the Tribeca Film Festival and put onto limited release in August, and since then it's not appeared in any cinema that I know of, bar one. I've only managed to find one which actually was screened, and that was the Cameo Cinema. It's called the Cameo Cinema, and I was thinking of going along to see it there, but unfortunately it's in St. Helena, not the island, St. Helena, California, USA. So it'll be a little bit of a bus ride, wouldn't it? So that's the only place it's actually been shown, as far as I know. So I'm afraid this is going to have to be watching it at home, and I don't like doing that. You know, I love the big screen. I love reviewing films on the big screen. Just watching them on the big screen, I think, gives you a totally different experience to seeing them on the small screen, as I've explained in previous roving reviews I've done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything I would have done, I would do on a roving review. I'm just going to do here sitting in the studio. So I hope that suffices for this particular video. Yeah, Tesla. Now Tesla is a film about Tesla, and if you remember, this came up when I went to see The Current War. Now I think it was last year or the year before, The Current War came out, which is a film about the clash between Westinghouse, Edison, Tesla, etc. In the late 19th century, when the electricity grid was first set up, there was a big battle over what kind of electricity it would be. Would they have direct current or alternating current? And this became known as the Current War, and it was won by Tesla. Tesla was the guy who brought us alternating current. Every electrical device you see around you, including the ones you're watching this on, is run by Nikola Tesla's direct current, alternating current. You get direct current from batteries, alternating current from the mains. Now, I said at the time, because Tesla does appear in it briefly, he's only a minor character. It's Westinghouse, and it's George Westinghouse and Thomas Edison who are like the central characters of this particular film. Tesla plays a kind of subsidiary role, which of course in real life he didn't. I think they wrote Tesla out of that story quite badly. So I said at the time, it would be nice if one day they actually make a film about Tesla. It would be nice for them to make a film about Tesla, which would be really brilliant. So I'm watching, maybe someone heard me, because they have. This is a Tesla. This is a Tesla. It's simply called Tesla. It's directed by Michael Almereyda. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's an American director, and he's best known for the film Hamlet, which is famous for its computer-generated armies fighting each other. It's an interesting film. It stars Ethan Hawke. This particular film, he was in Hamlet, and Almereyda obviously has a good relationship with him. It also Eve Hewson and Kyle MacLachlan are also in it. Now, what's interesting about this film, it's been quite long in production. I mean, it's surprising how films sometimes take so long to make. For example, like I explained when I went to see Eyes Wide Shut, that Stanley Kubrick had first come up with the idea of Eyes Wide Shut and started penning a production design and script while he was in the middle of producing 2001, so that's 1968. He first came up with the idea of adapting the Dream Story by Albert Schnitzel, which became Eyes Wide Shut. This is based on a script that I think he must have written it as well. Michael Almereyda, actually wrote in the early 1980s. Since then, he went on to do other things, and now he is. And now, of course, he's finally managed to get it on the screen, so I'm very interested to see it. With no further ado, I think we'll go into the cinema. Old habits. I think I'll go and watch it on my computer monitor. It's not quite the same, is it? Damn this damn pandemic lockdown. I hope it's over soon. As soon as it's over, right, I'm going to go back to doing my roving reviews yet again, and I'll never again bore you or make you or sell you short with one of these non-roving reviews. Okay, see you later. Well, where should I start? Firstly, I must say that was one hell of a lot better than the current war. That's one hell of a lot better than the current war. Now, in fact, a lot of my criticisms of the current war are kind of alleviated by the film. In a sense, it filled in a lot of the gaps that the current war left. It's interesting. There's another biopic of Tesla, which I mentioned before. It's a Russian one, actually. You can get it on YouTube. Actually, it's interesting. It covers some of the aspects of Tesla's life that's not covered by this one, but. Now, the Tesla himself in this film is played by Ethan Hawke. Now, he does it pretty well, actually. I mean, I think the accent is not quite up to. It's not quite up to what you'd expect, because now Nikola Tesla is actually a Serbo-Croatian. He was born in a little village in what is today Croatia. And he had a very strong accent. He didn't speak English until he went to university, and he had a very strong accent. And it's played down a little bit in this particular film. I mean, he has a very quiet voice. He speaks barely above a whisper, which apparently he was like. Apparently, he was very introverted, and he didn't want to, he was. Despite the fact he could perform very well on stage and had a good stage style, he was always very quiet. He's always very quiet, mouse-like, timid. This is the way he's often described. This film does tread over some of the same ground that the current war treads. For example, it begins in the 1880s when Tesla was working at Edison's General Electric, and explains how basically Edison cheated him out. I think it's $55,000 that he owed him for various for copyright works and things like that, copyright leases and things like that, and various rights on various things he'd invented. And of course, as you know, there was a lot of karma to be paid by Edison. He certainly did pay for it. He got as much deserved. He did get his comeuppance, which is a good thing. Edison's played by Kyle MacLachlan. Does a pretty good job, actually. He's brash, pretends not to hear people, things like that. What's interesting is there was an awful lot of. The film is filled with anachronisms. It's almost like a documentary. I mean, it's not. Of course, it is. It's more like a. It's almost like a. You get documentaries with bits of fictionalized scenes. This was almost like one of those. It was a kind of a documentary, but the fictionalized scenes were like 90% of it. But there were some anachronisms, for example, put in sometimes, and also there's some like non-fictional narration scenes. It reminded me a bit of that film. Do you ever see that film 24 Hour Party People? About Hacienda and that scene of the I forgot what it was all about, but it was about the Manchester record scene and things like that. It has like real people. It's partly a fictional, it's partly a feature film, but it was also a documentary. It has like documentary bits put in. And for example, yeah, there's a narrator. There's a narrator in this particular film, and the narrator is one of the characters, Anne Brown, who is JP. Sorry, Anne Morgan. Anne Morgan is J.P. Morgan's daughter, who is obviously quite smitten with Tesla. And Tesla never had a relationship with a woman. He had various problems which prevented him from doing it, not least what we today call obsessive-compulsive disorder. He suffered from this terribly. I mean, he could hardly bear to shake hands with people. And of course, sex is out of the question for anyone with that kind of disorder. I mean, literally, he'd have to wash his hands if he shook his hands with somebody. He had this incredible this neurosis to do with hygiene. He could never like have a sexual relationship. But she's the narrator. What's more, this is a narration that's kind of done in the present day. For example, even though she's in the period costume and she's in the sets that are used by the film, she'll suddenly just sit down and there'll be like a laptop computer in front of her. She'll open it and says, if you Google Nikola Tesla, you'll only see a handful of images, you know, and things like that. And obviously, in character, in costume, on set, and it's in the modern world, it's like shoved into the whole thing. There's several of these anachronisms throughout the film. It's put in on it very unobtrusively. You hardly notice them. There's some humour too, because when, Edison rips Tesla off terribly, and they're all eating ice cream in ice cream cones. Again, another anachronism, because that didn't come out until apparently ice cream cones didn't come out until a few years later. But then he said, "Oh, what are you going to do about it then?" Tesla gets up and shoves the ice cream in his face, and they have like an ice cream fight. That's kind of like a bit of a joke put in there. Then the narration cuts in and says, this never really actually happened. Again, there's another scene where Edison comes and apologises to Tesla and offers to pay him back the money he owes, and of course that never happened either. Edison was completely unrepentant, and then again it's something that's indicated that it's not real. Again, this is something that's inserted in as a kind of almost humorous, semi-humorous, semi-documentary scene, because after they're sitting in a pub and Edison goes over to the bar and he talks to the barman, orders a drink, and he pulls out a modern mobile phone and starts fiddling with it the way people do in pubs today. It's the film has several other of those. Anyway, Tesla was reduced to poverty by Edison. They ended up digging ditches, ironically, for electric power lines, and then he eventually gets out of that through his contact with George Westinghouse. I mean, he's finished with Edison. Edison interestingly invented other things like the phonograph, which was like a cylinder, which functioned like a vinyl disc record with the grooves on it and things like that. But then he teams up with George Westinghouse. Westinghouse is of course in the current war with Edison and wants alternating currents, and so Tesla works on his alternating current system. And the first time it's used, interestingly, is for electrocution, and Tesla doesn't like it because he doesn't approve of that, but this prisoner is electrocuted by AC. Do you remember that from the current war, it's horrible, but Edison used to try and discourage Westinghouse and Tesla from using Westinghouse and Tesla, saying AC was dangerous. He falsely claimed that AC was hazardous and dangerous. It would electrocute people. He killed that elephant. Just electrocuted an elephant. It was horrible. So Tesla keeps bumping into Anne. I mean, the thing about Tesla is, as I explained in my MGTOW video, Tesla was never a MGTOW. there was a reason he had this mental illness that prevented him having relationships with women, but he did fall in love, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. He also, I don't know if this is actually true, but he had like a friend with him, a Hungarian guy called Szigeti. Now, Szigeti is this guy who really was very fond of Tesla, a good friend, and sort of helps him and assists him. And I don't know if that actually really happened. See, the thing is, I think what they're doing is that the filmmakers may well be doing what I have done occasionally with my fiction, and I've seen myself doing this, is when you get a character who's very lonely and isolated, in a sense the author gives them a friend. So you put someone into the story who's not there and who wouldn't be there in a real life situation that the story's based on, or just in a fictionalized situation, and it's almost like this person is put in there to provide support and comfort to the character who's in that predicament. I've done that. I mean, this is interesting. I mean, this is almost like what Anne is, Anne Morgan. There's something a bit that reminds me, because she's sort of outside the story as the narrator. She's in the story as a character, but she's also the narrator of the story, and she appears as the narrator, as I said, in costume on set, surrounded by anachronisms, a modern projector and a screen, a computer, and Anne is a bit like Flying Buffalo, you know, my own character Flying Buffalo from the Roswell trilogy in a way. The good news is, when you're less than halfway through the film, you get to the Chicago World Fair. Now, this is something that happened in 1893 in Chicago, hence the name, and it's where the current war ends. And as I said in my review of the current war, I will put a link in the description box to that. I've already made a note to do so. Where the current war ends is really, that's where the Tesla story starts getting really interesting. Yet that is where the whole current war cuts off, and I always said they should make a film of what happens next, and since this is that film, it's like I said, it's like Somebody Heard Me. So it's because then what happens is, of course, what happens immediately after the end of current war is that Westinghouse is actually in serious trouble. He appears to have won, and he has technically won the current war, but at enormous cost, and he confronts Tesla about this in this film Tesla, and he says, look, Tesla, he says, I can't afford to pay you. I know I owe you this money, the money for these patents. We had a deal, you know, so many cents per kilowatt, etc. If I pay you, I'm bankrupt and our work is finished. If I don't pay you, we stay in business, we retain control, and we can build the Niagara Falls power plant, which is one of the most biggest famous projects he ever did. And Tesla says, okay, forget it. Now, it's really quite, because then the narrator cuts in and says, if only Tesla had an enlightened hustler to steer him through the crass commercial world. An enlightened hustler to steer him through the crass commercial world, because it's sad, because he was not a businessman, you see. He was a naive man who others took advantage of, and of course I know that that's the way the world is. That is the world we live in. I mean, my whole video about my humiliation reply to Stefan Molyneux video is about that. In a sense, Tesla is exactly the kind of person for whom that video was made. He's honest. He's an honest man who deals with people on good faith. He doesn't want selfishness, he doesn't want money. I mean, he says at one point to Edison, he says, you know, I'm not... Well, Edison actually says to him, he says, oh, for a man who's not interested in money, he said, you don't half suffer from a lack of it. This is just after he's basically screwed him. He's just screwed Tesla. I mean, there's some excellent camera work in this, some excellent film on the technical side. For example, at the Chicago World Fair, Tesla's sort of walking around, there's all the people. It's almost identical to the scene which appears in the current war, obviously based on the real Chicago World Fair. and Tesla's walking around. The camera's like wheeling around the place, following him, as if it gives the viewer the impression of the awkwardness and the insecurity and the uncertainty and the confusion that Tesla feels as an introverted man, a deeply introverted man, being in this social situation surrounded by bustling crowds. And I mean, he was like sitting, I think he might have been a bit autistic, you know. He's like sitting in a theatre once and everyone starts clapping around him and he goes like that. He can't bear to hear all these people clapping around him. Yeah. But of course, then they said, again, there's this thing, if only he had an enlightened hustler, a more worldly wise man, a sharper man would have said, I need to talk to a lawyer before just agreeing to Westinghouse's demand. Well, Westinghouse is very nice about it. He just said, look, this is the situation. I said, if I pay you, I can afford to pay you your royalties, everything I owe you for your work, but then I'm finished. And that's the end of it, and your work never, and your generator won't be built. The country will not get AC power, and our careers are both over. I don't know what I would have done. Tesla just says, tear up the contract. I'd have probably said something like, George, you know, all right, look, we can extend it for now, all right, and then maybe when you've recovered a bit, then you can pay me then. I'd have said something like that. And then you get this other as they're walking away from this very important scene, you get another anachronism. It's in an empty room which has just been used for the World Fair, and you hear the sound of a Hoover, a vacuum cleaner, starting up, and Tesla looks around briefly, and one of the cleaning women is using a modern vacuum cleaner. It's almost like I don't know what it means. It's symbolic, I think, of Tesla building the modern world with modern electrical appliances. Then the next bit is the most interesting of all, because it covers this. You see, this is where, as I said in the current war tells the early story of Tesla while not really including Tesla at all and making him a very supporting character next to George Westinghouse. It's Westinghouse and Edison who are really the stars of that show. Tesla's kind of like a subsidiary. But then it cuts off before it gets really interesting. It just covers the current war and that's it. Then Westinghouse wins that one, and Tesla doesn't even appear in the final scene of that particular film. In this one, it then moves on to 1899. Now, in 1899, Tesla begins the Colorado Springs experiments. Now, this is the most interesting part of Tesla's work. And they actually say, I mean, it's really well done actually, because there's a funny thing I've noticed with this film is that very often when they're in areas where most filmmakers would go on location and they would just go to the place where it happened, where these things happen, they put the actors clearly in a studio set in front of matte paintings. This happened several times in the course of the film. I don't know if it's because of budgetary restrictions or maybe it's just a stylistic choice, I don't know, but it's really interesting. And one of these things you can clearly see, well, Tesla's at this Colorado Springs experimental site, and there's his laboratory there with the electrode on the roof. You can clearly see, and there's wind, and you can hear the sound of wind, and there's even a scene where there's horses nearby, and you can see, you could see quite clearly he's by a projector screen. It would be perfectly possible to put him in a field with real horses, but they choose not to. It's a stylistic choice, and but you can see quite clearly he's standing in front of a matte painting on the wall or screen, showing the thing that's supposed to be there, which is the landscape. And you see in the distance there's a thunderstorm brewing. You can see quite clearly that even though there's wind, the grass is not moving. You can quite clearly see it's a painting. But this is interesting. Then the narrator, and the narrator comes in and says, in 1899 in Colorado Springs, Nikola Tesla conducted some experiments that have never been fully duplicated or fully understood. And that's the most, because that's when it seems that this was the first time that the government stepped in and prevented him from publishing his work. And indeed, the papers from that experiment, 121 years later, as far as we know, are still classified. I mean, I do really recommend. David Hatcher Childress has written a couple of really good books about Tesla. I've got one of them somewhere. I think it's The Amazing Inventions of Mr. Tesla or something like that. And he's also published Tesla's own work, the Tesla Papers, which Childress has published with his own editorial, which is also very good. He explains how basically this was all classified. I mean, it's a long, complicated story. And interestingly, a guy called Dr. John Trump comes into this. Now he's a physicist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he was involved. In fact, he was involved with in 1943 when Tesla died. He was involved basically with the FBI operation to seal off the whole room. Dr. John Trump. Yes, he is a relation. He's the president's uncle. It's quite amusing. It's quite amusing because what happens, of course, and this happened in real life, when Tesla actually starts the first Tesla coil, and it fills the whole area with electrical energy, to such an extent, it's such a powerful field that it blows out the generators at the local power station. And it's really funny because Tesla walks through the nearby town of Colorado Springs, and people come up to him and says, "What have you done? That bloody experiment of yours! Look what it's done! It's blown up our power station. Now we don't have any electricity. You bloody idiot! Look what you've done!" And he says, Tesla turns to him and says, in his quiet sort of voice, he says, "I have just induced an energy of 150,000 amperes with a 6,000 foot wavelength with a potential difference of 24,000 volts into the entire Earth. It has created a standing wave which you could pick up at the other side of the planet," he says. And he pauses and he says, "I'll pay for you to have a new power station," indicating this experiment proves they don't need a bloody power station anymore. That's wonderful. Oh, that's a wonderful scene, that is. I love that. It's got lots of good things in that. Now, you see, you might think that Tesla never has a love interest. It's not true. He actually had a crush on one of his friend's wives, which he never did anything about. He probably wouldn't have anyway, because he the thing about Tesla is he was a man of honour. I mean, I think even if he had been able to do something about it, he wouldn't have done. But there's a lady called Sarah Bernhardt, famous international actress of the time, who sort of flirts with him, and he's really kind of like you can see he's completely bowled over by her. He's really got the hots for her, and she sort of leads him on, but she doesn't go anywhere. And of course, Anne is very upset by this. Anne it keeps her dignity and everything, but she's very upset by this. Anne's obviously a lot younger than him, but she really likes Tesla. She really has got the hots for Tesla. Then, of course, fatefully, J.P. Morgan comes into the story. He was Anne's father, and again, I don't know how historical this is. Anne's friendship with Tesla, his own daughter's friendship with Tesla. I don't know how historical that is. I really don't, but. Of course, J.P. Morgan absolutely. It made what he did to Tesla makes what Edison did to him look like picking his pockets for the price of a can of Coke. He did a deal with J.P. Morgan, and this is when he starts the Wardenclyffe project. Tesla signs a deal with J.P. Morgan, which seems lucrative because Morgan promises to give him everything he needs. Morgan promises to both fund the project and also provide any assistance that Tesla needs in the construction, but crucially, it's with 51% on Morgan's side, which means Morgan has complete control. It's the classic 51% margin, which whenever you get a deal with someone and they offer you 51%. Be worried. This happens. I notice this often happens on the Dragon's Den. In fact, there's a scene in the film a bit like the Dragon's Den where Westinghouse is grilling him about. Sorry, not Westinghouse. J.P. Morgan is grilling him about everything he does, and saying, "Oh, you know, Tesla, you brag a lot, but you know, I'm not impressed by people like you. No one ever comes to me unless they're grovelling for money," and things like that. And then in 1902, the Wardenclyffe project begins, where he builds the famous, I think it's the image most associated with Tesla, the massive 370-foot net structure with a massive Tesla coil on top. He builds it at Wardenclyffe-on-Sea, Long Island, New York. If you go there today, and I've never been there, but I want to go there, I really want to go there at some point, you can see that there's like a little memorial. There's a Nikola Tesla museum, and there's like a memorial, and you can see the marks on the ground where it once stood, because in 1917 Morgan had it demolished. It's obliterated Tesla, because Morgan basically, once Morgan's got his 51% in, at the first opportunity he pulls the rug out from under Tesla. And it's a horrible story, and it really is. And Tesla is like, he just becomes more idealistic. At one point he believes he's hearing signals from Mars. He believes he's I mentioned this in my SETI talk, I think, that Nikola Tesla actually said this. Excuse me. I mean, it was signals from Mars. And then there's an interesting scene at that point, because there's a scene, it's in the laboratory, it's in the Wardenclyffe laboratory, it takes place in the Wardenclyffe laboratory. It's obviously like a studio with like the classic matte painting out at the back. It's got like the normal matte painting. And Anne comes in with this other guy, I think it's, I don't know if it's her brother or cousin or something, this guy's always hanging around. I didn't take note of who the character is, and they're sitting there and they're talking to him about energy, and this was, of course, this dialogue's not in the film, but J.P. Morgan very famously said about Tesla's electricity, if I can't put a meter on it, I don't want it. Which of course is the absolute classic line which leads to the free energy cover-up. And this is interesting because Anne says to Tesla, what happens if your system succeeds? What will this mean for the distribution of power? I'm not going to quote it. I didn't write down the exact quotation. I'll paraphrase. Tesla then says, it means wherever you go, you'll be able to get electricity for nothing, or extremely cheaply. You could be in the middle of a swamp in the middle of Africa. You could be in the middle of a desert. You could be anywhere, and you could flick a switch, and you will have electricity, and it'll cost nothing. This is what I want. He doesn't want money. He's not interested in making money. He wants this for the world. He wants to give this to the world. And then she says, does it occur to you the way the world works, the way the world runs is determined by the manipulation of energy and power? It's a crucial scene because this was completely absent from the current war. But what she's saying is, basically, she's giving him the same speech that, if you read Roswell Rising, you'll know that Gerald Caxton gives to Clayne Quilly. Only she does it very much more quickly and succinctly. She just says, look, don't you realise, that the fact that the power systems that are allowed to be used, that are not classified, are finite. They have to be paid for, and they have to be rationed. They have to be distributed from a central source so they can be controlled. And anything that doesn't do that is not allowed, apart from like impractical alternatives like wind, solar, wave power, which I tackled in my Planet of the Humans video a few weeks ago, which I won't put a link in the description box too, but you'll find it. And then Tesla goes back to Morgan just to demand an explanation and everything, and Tesla, as always, is dealing with Morgan as a rational, ethical being. It's sad because he goes looking for him and he can't find him, and Morgan's out on a tennis court playing tennis with his daughters, including Anne, who looks at all through this dialogue. Anne looks at him very sympathetically. Tesla can't find the gate to the tennis court, so he like pushes his way through the trees surrounding it. There's like the classic chicken wire fence, and he goes up and he catches Morgan's eye, and Morgan comes out and says, "What do you want? What do you want?" And then he basically says, "Look, can we keep this enterprise running?" because I have 15 other patents I'm about to write out, applications I'm about to write out. I'm so close to achieving my goal. I can't remember the exact dialogue, and I won't try to reproduce it. Can't we keep this going? And Morgan just looks at him contemptuously and says, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he basically says, bugger off. It's really sad. So that's exactly what Anne was warning him about. Morgan represents that desire to control, which indicates, you know, that the free energy cover-up is not something that emerged after Roswell or anything like that. It went back much earlier. It went back to before the Age of Oil. It was already in place by the beginning of the 20th century. All the points that I make about the free energy were known and understood by both sides in that conflict all those years ago. And then the film gets very surreal at the end, because there's like a karaoke scene again. This is like a narration scene, and Tesla goes up to a modern microphone and he starts singing in his quiet, sort of like genteel way. And the song he sings is everybody wants to rule the world by Tears for Fears, which is it's a great film. It's tragic. It's a tragic film. It pulls no punches, and I think it's something to do with me, maybe because I'm British, and this explains my obsession with Boudica and things like that as well. Is that we do have a fetish, we do have a kind of fixation as British people. We have a fixation on heroic failures. This is why I think everyone in Britain knows who's the first man to the South Pole. The answer is Roald Amundsen and his team. The second team to reach the South Pole was Captain Robert Scott and his team. But Robert Scott is more famous than Amundsen in Britain. Why? Because he failed. Because he tried so hard and so bravely and failed. And he put so much effort and so much dedication into what he did that on the way back he made a fatal mistake with logistics, and the whole team died before they could reach their supply cache. They died of starvation and cold. And this is what Boudica was. Boudica was a heroic failure, but you know, even in their failures, even in their lifetimes, which appear, Tesla died in January 1943, absolutely penniless and forgotten, well, not completely forgotten. Apparently 2,000 people attended his funeral, but he was pretty much, he'd been handed his hat and pushed aside in the energy war by then. By that time it was all over. He was pretty old. He was 87, and he was in poor health. Apparently he was living off canned tuna. He wasn't eating properly. And at the New York hotel, one day they went up. They realised he hadn't come out of his room, because he was hiring a room at the hotel with the last of his money. And he didn't come out one morning, and they went up and found him dead. And the first thing they did, I mean, there's a photo of him as an old man. He looks horrible. He looks drawn. He's sallow complexion, you know, deep set eyes. It's painful to look at. And the very first thing that happened when his death was reported is, even before the undertakers were allowed in to take it to remove the body, the FBI sealed off the entire room, and all his papers, all his books, all the prototypes he'd been working on, all his blueprints were confiscated, and they've never been seen again. And as I said, Dr. John Trump, the uncle of the current President of the United States, was involved with that. For good or bad, I don't know. It's possible, obviously at that time it was for bad, but who knows. So it's a story. I mean, I'm haunted by this image of the guy. It's from the opening scene. The scene opens, indeed the scene is repeated later on, where he is on a roller skates at a roller skating venue, where it's just a novelty roller skating park place where people go, and he's sort of like stumbling around, and Anne is like trying to get him to skate some more. And see, Anne is quite clearly is very different from her father. She's a decent, caring woman, and she's very, very fond of Tesla. and I think she's in love with him. Of course, he doesn't really. I mean, he must notice, but he doesn't respond in any way to her like that. So it's a very unrequited love, and it's just it's sad to see this man, this great genius, behaving. Sometimes it's very comical, like when he's trying to roller skate and can't. And other times he's just stumbling. He's like walking around like that, looking really nervous and timid in this huge crowd at the Chicago World Fair. Or he's trying to track down J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan won't speak to him, and eventually he has to come and catch him at the tennis court and talk to him through the bloody fence. And it's like, and it's this humiliation and abuse and the fact that he is put upon like this that is so sad. Not only that, but the story of Nikola Tesla is all the more poignant today because we can its long-term effects are all around us. As I said, if J.P. Morgan had not been able to suppress Tesla's technology, as Childress talks about in his book, the New World Order would be impossible. We'd be living in the post-Illuminati world, no doubt about it. And its effects are everywhere. I mean, as I was just before I started this particular video, I've heard that there's a famous tree in Warwickshire. It's a pear tree. Apparently, it's one of the oldest pear trees and biggest pear trees in the country. It was named Tree of the Year. I forgot what it's called, but I'm going to write a Panmo Voice blog article about this, and it's been like the pride and joy of this little village in Warwickshire for centuries. It's 250 years old. It's been demolished, and cut down, and it's been cut down to make way for HS2. It's just been cut down. It's been felled. It's been taken apart and cut to pieces to make way for HS2. It's an awful, pointless thing, and it's like. And this is the kind of world we live in. It's a world created by people like J.P. Morgan and the people he was working for, the Illuminati, power brokers, and the people who don't want us to have free energy and don't want us to have anything other than things they could put a meter on. I don't know. I hope it's funny this kind of like the links that happen with people, because the actor Ethan Hawke, who plays Tesla in this film, he's somebody I'm very familiar with this actor because funny thing is, when I was a little kid, it's funny things you remember. When I was a little kid, this film came out called Explorers, which is like it's a kind of children's science fiction story. It's something you may not enjoy today, but I mean, it's a film I can still watch and still enjoy, and I still think is good. It's about a group of three boys aged about 12 who they suddenly find they're having telepathic communication with aliens, and these communications show them how they can build their own spaceship, and they build a spaceship and they go out and meet the aliens, and they come back. Anyway, one of the characters is played by Ethan Hawke, and the character is called Ben, my name. And it's funny because he's exactly like I was at that age. If you watch the film, the character Ethan Hawke, because he was a child actor, Ethan Hawke, we're of a similar age, and he is exactly like me when I was that age. Strange, that, isn't it? But you know what? It could be. It's funny because I was talking to someone the other day about how I'm using the monitor over there as a light source. Maybe I don't need it because I've moved the actual main light a bit closer. Maybe I don't need it. But I was talking to someone the other day about how we seem to be getting a lot of UFO documentaries out at the moment. I mean, there's the Phenomenon, there's Cable Green, there's the Aerial School. There's a whole string of them, of these UFO documentaries. The new Stephen Greer one, The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And it's almost like it's almost like they're a prelude to something. And I can't help wondering if the film Tesla is also a prelude to something. We have a president of the United States who is the nephew of the man involved who dealt with Nikola Tesla when he died. Now, John Trump's no longer alive. Donald, his nephew, is, and I think is it possible that he has some information? And at some point he's going to tell us. He's going to tell the world. Because if he does, the tragedy of Nikola Tesla will turn into a triumph. It'll turn into a joy. And that's what I live for. I mean, sometimes the hill, when I look at the story about the tree, which I told you about the tree, it sometimes feels like that hill is just so damn steep and it's so high we can never get to the top of it. But you know what? Maybe we can. Maybe it's soon. Maybe it's coming. Maybe this disclosure thing is coming, and the end of the New World Order and the post-Illuminati world. And it could be that Tesla, the film Tesla, which I just watched, is a herald of that era, that upcoming era. I hope so. Anyway, you know what comes next. I mean, it may not be a roving review. I might not be walking on the street waving my camera around, but let's see what the critics say. So let us begin with her Panwo TV tradition with the one and only Guardian. The Guardian, yes. The Guardian. Oh, now I'd like to make, before I start reading this, I'd like to make a prediction, which is that they will not like it. Now, why won't they like it? Well, it's not really woke. By woke, what I mean is that the characters who are white men in real life are portrayed as white men in this particular film, which is completely accurate. Now, there are non-white characters in the film. There's a Indian shaman or guru of some kind. There's also several servants, and the servants are black. That's historically accurate. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's historically accurate. It happened. It's something that is just in the past and it cannot be changed. I mean, people say, well, it's not right. It's wrong that they treated black people like servants. Whether it's right or wrong or not, it happened. And the fact is, there's nothing wrong with actually bringing in moral questions when it comes to historical events. There's nothing wrong with bringing in contemporary moral discussions about historical events, but it is when there's a political agenda to induce guilt in certain members of the population, which is why I don't really get to go there, simply because I know that anything I concede in terms of blame or shame or guilt will be weaponized against me. So that's as far as I'm concerned. That's the end of it. And this is a review by Ellen E. Jones, who is a critic for The Guardian, and she says this: Tesla review, portrait of an inventor out of step with his time. Ethan Hawke and Kyle MacLachlan star in Michael Arameda's humorous, ambitious film about the underappreciated visionary. Every historical drama invokes some element of pure invention. Maybe it happened like this, maybe she said it like that, but Michael Arameda's biopic of the Serbian-American inventor Nikola Tesla is rather more open about this process than most. It's a style. I mean, that's all they did. I mean, they just simply, as I said, it's a very, very unique kind of way they put this in. It's just kind of a very unusual kind of film. It's very different to most. And then, and now she points in this. She mentions the Tesla company by Elon Musk, a clean energy company named in his honor. This has been played out on the screen several times, most recently by Nicholas Hoult in The Current War. No, The Current War is very different to Tesla, and Tesla is actually a completely different thing. Absolutely nothing at all. Like, as I've explained the differences between The Current War and Tesla quite considerably. The contrast between this experience and that of Tesla's erstwhile employer and sometimes rival, Thomas Alva Edison,
the great American usually credited with the invention of the electric light bulb, suggests itself as an obvious dramatic framework for a biopic, but not this biopic. Well, why is that? Why that? I mean, what she's saying is, she's saying that the only way they can present the Tesla's life is by focusing on his conflict with Edison. It's for what he's most famous for, yes, but that's not what is most important about Tesla. What I like about this film, Tesla, is that it moves away from that into some of the more interesting things he did later in life. So she's basically, what's this problem is, what she seems to be having a problem with, Ms. Ellen E. Jones, is that it's not kind of a repeat of the current war. I mean, is that your point, Ms. Jones? Anyway, Alameda is more interested in anachronism as a metaphor for a man fully out of step with his era. At one point, Edison is seen passing time at the 1893 World Chicago. Oh, she mentions the iPhone thing, yeah. And she says, "You're curious though, as a film is a stickler for period detail. When it comes to the dimly lit drawing rooms, yeah, where most of the scenes take place." Yeah, fair enough. And they also have like the paintings. It's obviously there are a few location shots like the tennis court and things like that, but most of it is definitely done with a studio, and sometimes it's deliberately made to look like that. It's almost like a theatre. It's almost like they're asking if someone will adapt this into a stage play. Some amusingly arch performances from Kyle MacLachlan and Eve Hewson as Anne Morgan that draw out the humour, but as the anachronisms pile up, any attempt to follow the film's biographical through thread is frustrated. No, it's not. What are you talking about? I mean, do you know? And maybe it'd be better if this critic had actually maybe reviewed a little bit about Nikola Tesla and maybe just at least even read his wiki page before she wrote this article, this review. Oh dear. Intentionally, for sure, since Almerida is aiming at a deeper biological truth. To watch Tesla the film is to admire its ambition while regretting its follies. Much like Tesla the man, perhaps. Oh dear. She gives it 3 out of 5, which I suppose for the Guardian is not bad, and she doesn't bring up the usual Guardian line about, oh, it's all white men, yuck. She didn't do that, so that's a credit to her. I'm glad, because I was waiting for that. You always get that from the bloody Guardian. But as far as I think this critic, as usual, this review, this criticism of Tesla, is unfair, and it shows a lack of vision, possibly a lack of previous knowledge about who Nikola Tesla really was and where his most important contribution lay. Because what he's most famous for is not, in my view, what he should be best remembered for. So now we've got the Guardian out of the way, let's go to Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes here describes Tesla as appropriately bold and ambitious. Tesla takes a number of risks that don't always pay off, but Ethan Hawke's performance makes those flaws easier to forgive. That's not bad, slightly better than The Guardian. But the Tomatometer is 60%, that's the critics aggregator. Audience score 43%, so audience thought less of it actually than the critics did. Usually for good films it's the other way around, but anyway, you've got to always look at Rotten Tomatoes if you're going to look at movie reviews. And disappointing, but of course this is just my opinion. You know, other people disagree with me. So now let us go to the New York Times, a newspaper made famous for its UFO coverage, and I'll do the accents. It's kind of Richard Dolan-like accent. I think that'll do. Incidentally, the reason I do these accents is not just to take the mickey out of the Guardian. It's so that when you, as the audience, when I'm reading from the critics page, their words and my words, you can tell which is which, because of course you can only hear me, you can't actually see. A Tesla review: lightning strikes but quietly. Ethan Hawke plays the melancholy visionary Nikola Tesla in Michael Arameda's meditative anti-biopic. Okay, firstly, Tesla was never melancholy. Tesla was absolutely, if anything, he was naively optimistic. And I don't know what you mean by it was meditative, yes, very much so, but antibiotic? I don't know what you mean by that. Anyway, this is by A.O. Scott. Anyway, when we first see Nikola Tesla, he's on roller skates, making his way with dignified caution across a marble floor of some kind in the Gilded Age. And then it talks about. Let me go back and miss this bit out. And she mentions the flipping open of the laptop. I'm not going to say this everything word verbatim. But he says, these whimsical moments of speculation and anachronism remind us that Tesla, which chronicles a crucial period of the inventor's life, is anything but a conventional biopic. Yeah. And that's good, isn't it? Yes, and he says here, thank goodness for that. My own internet investigations yielded a fascinating datum that Tesla and I share a birthday, and also has an extensive Wikipedia page devoted to Nikola Tesla and popular culture. Oh, well done, mate. That's good. That's good work there, Mr. A.O. Scott. That's more than what the bloody Guardian person did. Anyway, yeah. While hardly obscure in his lifetime, Tesla, who was born in what is now Croatia in 1856 and died in New York in 1943, has in recent decades become a fixture in cool nerd pantheon. Yeah, and he mentions the Tesla electric car. David Bowie played... Oh, excuse me. In a Christopher Nolan movie. And what's that then? What's that? Oh my goodness me. Oh, what's this? I can't. I've got there's no link. It's a dead link. But anyway, the mistake arises from the sense that Tesla anticipated, at least in theory, much of the technology we now marvel at and complain about, including global wireless communication. But as Anne Morgan notes, very few images of him will pop up when you Google. He remains a stubborn aura of mystery. Yeah, but you see, it wasn't. Yeah, there is an element to that. I think maybe the anachronisms of you see these strange appearances of modern technology in this period setting. Well, obviously put in deliberately, not mistakes. But maybe I don't know. It may be to do with that, but obviously there's more to this film than that, isn't it? There's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, it's, as I said, the whole film covers so much of what I wanted it to cover. I was really hoping that this film Tesla would actually do what it did. I wasn't sure it would. I thought it would just it's just going to be another kind of like copy of it's going to be a copy of the current war, just focusing more on Tesla. Well, it wasn't. It was much better than that. Anyway, he continues. Almeida, a notably cerebral filmmaker who thinks in arresting, elusive images, doesn't set out to solve the riddle so much as to find a way of articulating it. Ethan Hawke, with somber countenance and a heavy moustache, plays Tesla as a restless soul burdened by the genius and haunted by a melancholy. Again, this word melancholy. He's not melancholy, no. A less imaginative film might have tried to trace that sorrow to a source in childhood, or to establish a link between Tesla's saturnine temperament and his unsettled career. But the character in Hawke, quietly magnetic performance is neither a heroic visionary nor a tragic hero. He's a mood. No, that's not fair. That's not fair. He wasn't. Firstly, it's I don't know what saturnine actually means. Although I know Saturn is supposed to be the planet of sort of temperance and sort of control, I think. Hawke's quietly magnetic performance. That's good, isn't it? Is that like a pun, or is that something? Because do you remember the reviewers of the current war use a lot of electromagnetic puns in their criticism? But anyway, I'm glad you think it's magnetic. I think he did a pretty good thing anyway. The film follows his brooding progress from Edison's workshop to the 1893 World Fair, then onwards to Colorado and Long Island. That's the key point, though, isn't it, Scotty, whatever your name is? Colorado and Long Island, where Tesla pursues interestingly grand and esoteric ideas. Along the way, he attracts and alienates allies, inventors, and investors and potential lovers. Yeah, a flicker of romantic interest passed between him and Anne. Well, I'm glad you didn't use an electric metaphor there, but it's more than a flicker. I mean, it's mostly one-sided, but Anne is absolutely besotted with him, you can tell. He also draws a radiant attention of an actress, Sarah Bernhardt, who, like him, appears as a prophetic figure in a rapidly modernizing world. An avatar of the nascent celebrity culture. Yeah, oh, okay, that's true. I suppose so. Tesla mainly lives inside his own head, and Tesla offers an intriguing and sometimes puzzling excursion into the brain of its maker. I suppose it does really. It's sort of like very first person, I would say. It's centered, even though of course it's not. Of course, the narrator is someone else. It's interesting they have that narrator. Like I say, a flying buffalo-like character who keeps dropping in and out. So is a part of the story, but seems to understand the story from outside it. But it's still, you do sort of see things through his head. I think. I don't know. He mentions here, this is interesting, he says, the ideas don't arrive as topics of conversation, but rather as motifs, ballast for the arresting, expressively shadowed compositions that the director and his cinematographer Sean Price Williams have fashioned, often using paintings and still photographs as backdrops. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I think that was an interesting sort of, that was an interesting touch, I thought. I think it was original. Maybe I don't think they were being original for original's sake. It was original. Oh, he brings up the current war. You've got to. I think you've got to. Maybe you just have to compare this with the current war. I mean, it's inevitable. You're going to compare it with the current war, which is. He says here. The contrast between their approaches to electrification was the subject of another recent movie, Alfonso Gomez Rejoins The Current War, which emphasized the business competition between Edison and George Westinghouse, those battling entrepreneurs played by Benedict Cumberbatch and Michael Shannon, with Nicholas Hoult in the secondary role as the egghead Tesla. Here, notwithstanding Jim Gaffigan's impressive bewhiskered turn as Westinghouse, the strongest energy flows between Hawke and McLaughlin. I don't know. Jim Gaffigan is the actor who played Westinghouse. He's quite good, actually. You can see he's like got this huge bushy beard and sideboards, which was famous, I think. Anyway, for Alameda fans, the pairing is a welcome reunion. In the director's wonderful Hamlet, Hawke plays the gloomy title character, while McLaughlin was a disarmingly human Claudius, his stepfather and nemesis. Here, the rhetoric is not as grand, the stakes are less sharply defined, and the actors wear their borrowed personalities lightly. You might not learn anything there. It beats to know about Tesla, but that's what the internet is for. But you'll feel nonetheless illuminated by his presence. Oh, that's that's good. That's actually quite good because that's a good way to put it. Actually, it's quite a good review. A lot more. You can see this guy liked the film a lot better than the other critic. It says here they wear their borrowed personalities lightly. Yeah. But he's talking there about Hamlet, which I've not seen except the famous scenes with these CGI armies. But you might not. He says you might not learn everything there is to know about Tesla. You learn a hell of a lot more than you do from any other film I know that anyone's ever made about him, apart from that Russian biopic, which is very similar to Tesla. This one actually, which is kind of like. Yeah, you learn new things. I think there's probably more in this new film than there was in the Russian one even. Interesting, in the Russian one you do learn about Tesla's love of pigeons. That's not covered in this particular film. Yeah, so that was quite a good review, I thought. Yeah. Okay, now this is RTE, an Irish outlet. Now I've had to put on an Irish accent, so I don't want to insult Thomas Sheridan and anyone like that. I'll try to put on a Niall Murphy style accent. Tesla, brilliant mind, but disappointing biopic. Oh, really? Is that so? 2 out of 10. 2 out of 5. Bloody hell, anyway. Here's one for a table quiz in better times. What role links David Bowie, Nicholas Hoult and Ethan Hawke? The answer is Nikola Tesla. Oh, we just heard about this with David Bowie. I'll have to look. What Christopher Nolan film was David Bowie in? I'll look it up later. Hang on. Oh, all right, I'll hit pause. One moment. Oh yes, and the answer is The Prestige. It's a Christopher Nolan film from 2006. Right, I'm going to have to watch it now, aren't I? Yeah. Oh God, don't ask me to review it, please. But David Bowie plays Nikola Tesla. Okay, that's a bit of trivia there for you that RTE presented us with. Anyway, the answer is Nikola Tesla, pioneer of AC, electricity and wireless communication. And now Hawke takes his turn to interpret an enigma in this odd venture. Bowie's absolute beginner's director Julian Temple described the lead singer as someone who always seemed to be the future. Oh, also, I don't want to hear about bloody David Bowie. Get spin on, will you? With heart on sleeve, writer-director Michael Almeida focuses on Tesla's dealing with fellow inventors Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse and financier J.P. Morgan, determined to elevate his achievements in the eyes of the public and give him the name and recognition he deserves. Actually, no, the film doesn't focus on that. That's kind of like the prelude. I mean, it starts with that, of course, which is the famous part of Tesla's life. Then it goes. It's almost like you think Tesla just died in 1893. He doesn't. He continued. What happens after that is far more interesting. Anyway, the aim is admirable, the execution less so. Oh, who is this blue? Oh, it's Harry Guerin. All right, Harry Guerin. What have you got? Why is that? Come on, tell me that. Rather than take the conventional biopic route, is that? Would you prefer him to do that? Would that be better? Almeida leaves a trail of anachronisms in this film to show what the future would bring in the wake of Tesla's work. But that's imagination. That's a very original stylistic device. Oh, anyway. Although mostly set in the 1800s, we see an iPhone, a Google search of Tesla, and more. Well, these weren't as part of Tesla's life in his... For goodness sake, Mr. Harry, right? These are not meant to be part of Tesla's life. It's a film about Tesla. It's a kind of surreal injection of almost like say pseudo documentary into the film. That's the point of it. Didn't you understand that? I think it's very obvious. At one point we're told this meeting never happened, and near the end there's a scene that's a contender for the most unexpected movie moment of 2020. Alright, that's the karaoke scene, yeah, okay. These flights of the imagination, however, don't compensate for a disjointed and dragging narrative that fails to put enough drama into a fascinating true story. No, it doesn't. No, alright, each their own, but I think you're wrong here. I think you're being unfair. Part of the problem is that Tesla lives so much in his mind that his aloofness denies the audience a character to hold on to, leaving them as frustrated as Eve Hewson. That's the potential love interest. Morgan's daughter Anne, also deserving of a big screen outing. She was very good, I thought. The film, like their relationship, just doesn't have that spark. That's the end of it. I can't help noticing these reviews are awfully short, actually, compared to other films I've seen. But anyway, Harry Guerin doesn't like it. I think he's alright. You should say he's being unfair. I mean, well, it's a subjective thing, isn't it? But I do wonder if he really understood it, you know? That old line. I don't really think he really understood it.
So thank you very much, critics, for your input on that. And this is my critic. I am the critic, and I'm giving you an input on the film Tesla. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, I was going to say go and see it in the cinema, but that's not very likely. You get it on Amazon Prime and all these other places. You can. I watched it on Prime. You can get it on other websites, other video sharing sites, and see what you think of it. Like I say, I really do recommend it. I think it's good. I enjoyed it. I don't know what, for something out of 10. I don't know what to give it out of 10. But I just say it's a good film, much better than the current war. Everything that was wrong with the current war was right with this one. So, well done to all the people involved in producing it. And Panmo TV viewers, I appreciate you watching. As I said, I'll probably leave you alone for a few days now, but I do have like another comment reply video coming up very soon. That's I think priority now, because it's almost a month since the last one. And of course, with the election, I'm going to be doing a couple of live streams and maybe more, so check those out as well. And I've got a couple more ideas too, so in fact I've got something I've almost finished filming already, so that'll be coming out probably not for a while. I'll give you time to digest what you just swallowed from me before I do that. So but in the meantime, thank you very much all of you for watching. Hospital Port as Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.